Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Blank Pages with our very special guest, Margarita Coale, on the three-peat.
Yes, we love having you here. I'm so glad you're back because you are so full of information. So,
For
what do we want to talk about
anybody,
today?
well, whoever has missed the
Oh, yeah.
last two, maybe this is their first time ever tuning in. Margarita, could you pretty please introduce yourself?
I am a attorney that specialized right now in what I would call business law, the business of being a lawyer. And it is a business of protecting your intellectual property, protecting your business, and making sure that you have thought about estate matters. So it's like those three kind of buckets, right? I also do help some clients in litigation they might have, which could involve litigation involving, you know, from reversion of rights to
Which is the boring stuff.
that's just
Two,
yeah,
yeah.
which is the boring stuff. So that's what I do, and I've been practicing for about 20 some years, but the last 10 in this area. So
Margarita is very modest. She is like the majority of the authors who I know's attorney. She is in the tea, in all the tea, and knows all the tea. Not that she can speak on that, and that's not what this is for. But there's a lot going on, and there are a lot of moving parts, and so many authors started this without a business mindset, without a legal background, without an attorney. I myself, I mean, when I brought you onto my team, I had 40 books and none of them were copywritten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of mine aren't still.
Yeah.
Get
And
all that.
I felt like I was a businesswoman. I felt like I was doing everything right. And since then, obviously, everything has changed. But with all of the moving parts in the world right now, we were just discussing there's a lot of negatives from, Meta using literary works without having copyrights in order to do so to create their AI to, laws like being put on the floor for votes, whether or not it has backing or not, and just overall fear with a lot of things that are going on. We were discussing what can we do in the positive, right? What can we do? And I just came out of therapy, so I'm in a great mindset for this one. So, from a legal standpoint, hit us with your best shot.
I think what we were talking before this was about what can you do as you're hearing all this stuff and people may be behaving inappropriately in the protection of intellectual property, right? Because I think one of the concepts, and I don't know, there's the people who steal, right? The people who put your work online and you hope that whatever they're putting it on, there's going to be a virus or something happens to them, right? And the theory about what can I do if my work is put up for free, and what can I do to take downs, to the fact of the matter of your work gets uploaded sometimes at Etsy, sometimes on YouTube, and whether people aren't thinking about it or people are not, because I have a client who's become really popular and a lot of her books get put on Etsy. And people, when you go and say, how can 800 people have gone and bought this book, right? Well, because it's cheap. And when people think, oh, it's on Etsy, it must be okay,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the times, so there are different buckets of things you can do. I think you can't worry about the people that are putting your work for free in these weird websites that you have to give everything but your firstborn child, or it's asking you for information, right? But you can, as an author, do something to try to protect your intellectual property on YouTube. We get a lot of takedowns sent to YouTube. And I wish that we could get a group of authors together that we could actually do what the music industry did, which is okay, it starts with this is Audible. Like it shouldn't be that hard to figure out that this is a copyright infringement, because that's how a lot of these videos, but what the people who load them start making money, right? Because the more people that listen to it. So I think focusing on things that empower you and that give you kind of the bang for your buck. So for a lot of the authors that I work with, including Stacy and Willow, right, is saying, okay, what do I want to spend my emotional energy and my money in. And the emotional energy is what can I control? And my bang for my buck is my work copyrighted? Do I have the protection as much as I can get? And can I use trademark as a protection too? Do I have a series that's my most popular series? Can I trademark it?
Can we talk about that though? Because our work is copywritten, right? But then we know for a fact that Meta used
They don't care. Like, what are we going to do? A lot of us, they know we're not going
that's
to go
what I
to
mean.
court. We're
What
not going to
can
fight
we
them,
do when a company of that magnitude, and according allegedly in the lawsuit, allegedly, Zuckerberg responded to an email asking whether or not he approved of using the website in which they were illegally downloaded. So he was aware that they were illegally downloaded and he gave approval to use copywritten work without paying the authors. And this occurred months and months ago. And I don't know what all is true. Obviously, we saw a TikTok while I was on vacation, saw another TikTok, read, sorts of things. You never really know what all is true, right? There's this side and then another. But it feels very much like if somebody does do something to you, especially somebody of that magnitude, right? One of the richest people in the entire world running a social media empire that we also rely on, like what can we really do? That's where it gets to a point of almost, not that I feel hopeless, I feel enraged. Like, how dare you? You have so much fucking money. All you had to do was pay us, but you knew it would be faster to just steal it.
Well, I think you're kind of taking a big concept, which is what is it going to be used for, right?
Right. And it was
So,
used for AI.
yeah,
Right?
what is it going to be used to, and do I want to my work to be used for that? So
Correct. Oh,
that's the
and
two
there
different.
also a key point for listeners. I believe Chelsea Handler, as well as a few other people, celebrities, did file litigation.
Well, I'm going to talk about that. There's
Okay.
about 17 cases filed,
Okay.
right?
That's my lucky
So
number. Hey guys,
yeah.
it's gonna be a good episode. My lucky number came up.
So nobody else can add anymore because that will go against what
Yeah.
That would be, so I think right now, one source of information for people who really are interested in this, and I've had a lot of clients who say, hey, I understand that there's a class action out there, right? Can I join? So let's take a step back. So what has happened is with the increase of generative AI, right? The AI who learns from itself, because we have used artificial intelligence before, Wordly, grammar check, all of that is just checking. That is artificial intelligence. Now we're talking about one where it's scraping information from sources and saying, can we come up with something that is machine generated, right? And the code has gotten good enough that they're trying to do that. So the generative AI, there are lawsuits that are being divided, and I'm going to divide it into the big three ones. And I just gave a presentation, so I'm just pulling it up to look. So there's the OpenAI cases. Most of them are in the Southern District of New York. There's the Meta cases that are in Northern California. There are the Google cases that are also in Northern California. And then there's a Databricks and a NVIDIA cases that are in California too. So
That's relevant, right? The location of the lawsuits, because you or your business have to be present in those locations in order to join those lawsuits, right?
yeah, well, okay, generally yes, but not when they're class actions.
Okay,
So
and
yeah,
all three are class action?
all of these, so a class action, just as kind of a class action 101, and I'm simplifying a lot. A class action 101, and you get these postcards saying, if you ever took Tylenol from such and such date to such and such date, you might be impacted by this lawsuit. So it's a lawsuit that is filed by named plaintiffs, and the named plaintiffs are saying what happened to me happened to a bunch of other people in a bunch of other jurisdictions. We have the same type of case, we have the same type of issues. So let us be the representative because it's more efficient for the court because there's all of these thousands of people that it happened to. If everybody filed the same case over and over and over again, it would clog the courts. So the authors that have brought this on, and the Authors Guild is participating in some of them, that are bringing them on behalf of the authors, are basically saying the scraping of the information, the scraping of the work happened to a bunch of people. And all of these people are in this database. The Atlantic has a really good database to figure out whether your work was used in it or not. And if it would be helpful, I can give you some links where some of your readers can look over what they have to do. So let's take it a step back. So you have a copyright by publishing your work in some sort of medium, right? If it's in your head, you don't have a copyright. You have to publish it where other people can see it. And if you have your work out there, you have a copyright given to you by law. You don't have a registered copyright. A registered copyright is when you take a PDF or a book, you file for registration, you pay the US government $65, and you get an electronic certificate.
And for our audience, the way I view those two is, one is you have copyright. If somebody stole it, you'd be able to get them to take it down. The other one, where you pay the government and you get it registered, is if somebody profited off of your book, you can then sue them for that money. But if you didn't pay the government, you're not allowed to sue for money. Is that the basic?
You're not allowed to sue for statutory damages, which already tell you how much you're going to get for every type that infringement happens, and for attorney's fees. And the hardest thing to do is, how do you prove somebody damaged you if they stole your work?
Right.
Like, how do you say, oh, because these were in LibGen, I didn't make $10,000 more dollars? Like, do you have evidence? How do you prove that? And I think for a lot of lay people, the legal system is very frustrating. It's very frustrating for the non-lay people, and it's frustrating for the legal people too, but it works slowly, right? There's a lot of concepts that you have to prove. So even though you could say, well, I think I'm losing money because XYZ, well, how do you prove it? How do you empirically prove that that was the damage?
And unfortunately, you can only sue for money. You can't sue because fuck you, right? That's not, we can say, you took this, you're an asshole, I'm going to sue you. You have to sue for monetary. That's what a civil lawsuit is. It's all for money, correct?
Well,
otherwise we'd always be in court.
Right.
Okay, so you have to have a case that can be resolved under the laws. And the only thing that you can do in a civil court is either you can force somebody to do something or tell them to stop doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you entered into this contract to sell me this real estate. I gave you everything, and now you don't want to sell it to me. And this real estate is unique. So we get the court to force you to do it. Yeah. Or you cause me some sort of damage. If you cause me some sort of damage, how do I compensate you? Well, we no longer put banners or put A's on people's clothes or anything like that. So the only way I can compensate you is by trying to quantify what was the damage, what damage did it cause you money-wise, right? And that's part of the problem. How do I quantify the damage to somebody saying, you put my book on Etsy in a PDF? Well, is your damage that you're losing $8? Is your damage because it's diminishing your brand? What's your damage? So
in the case of Meta, what is the damage if they took our work without our permission to create their AI? And how does that become quantified? And or why is there only a civil lawsuit that we have to file as opposed to criminal charges because from my perspective, from where I sit in my naivety, I think we live in a country where if you steal something, you are criminally charged. It does appear, though, when it comes to intellectual property, that people can steal it and there are no criminal charges.
Okay, and that's kind of a very philosophical question in a way of like, okay, so who can bring criminal charges?
Right. Not me, because if I
Yeah.
could, some bitches would be in jail. That's
Right.
Okay, so in the world of Willow, that
yes.
would happen. However, in the world of where you have a government, the only party that can bring a criminal case is the government, whether it is the federal government for breaking federal law or the state government for breaking state law, right? And in that case, the case would have to be investigated and started by the Department of Justice, right? In the case where something happened nationwide. Now, there are investigations that are ongoing, but again, the wheels of justice turn very slow. And unfortunately, we're in a circumstance that because of the administration promises to downgrade the size of the federal government doesn't have the funding to do a lot of these investigations, right? And a lot of it, and they're focusing on other things. Now, let's go back to okay, but the civil lawsuits are the ones that really can have some impact because the concept of a civil lawsuit is that you're punishing the guilty party by making sure they pay enough damage that it's going to deter other people from doing that, right? So if somebody does it and all of a sudden there is a large verdict for this saying yes, you cannot use, and it's a statutory issue, right? If they find that there was 1,000 copyrighted material they use without permission, without, transformative use, where it really was just copyright infringement. And when you look at the word copyright infringement, what it means is that somebody took your book and copied it. That's really what it's copied the work and you used it. You didn't transform it. You didn't do anything with it, which is a defense of a use. Because you have sometimes, for example, how can I take a book and criticize it or comment about it? Well, because I'm transforming, right? I'm analyzing, I'm adding something into it. And I think in the past we talked about this crazy case, which I love. There's a Barbie is trademarked, and which is a sort of intellectual property. And there was this photographer that would take Barbie and do just awful things with her. Like he would wrap her in bacon and put her in the oven. And I mean,
Barbie.
Yeah, poor Barbie. So there were all these Barbie.
I know what I used to do to Barbie.
Yeah, a lot of things. But I think it was a social commentary, right? This was
Yeah.
a social commentary. It came with that. So Barbie sued the creator and basically said, you're misusing our trademark. And the court came back and said, okay, I don't think there are any, 9-year-olds that are thinking that you're selling Barbie dolls here, right? There's no, this is so it's a transformative use. So then the question that the courts are going to be looking at, right? First of all, why is LibGen, which is one of the sources, right? Which I've recommended to my clients. Let's find out if your work was used. And if your work was used, let's send a takedown notice. That's why we have a DMCA process. You might not get anything right now, but at least you started the step of saying this was not okay. You were not authorized to use it, right? And I have a valid copyright. As the cases progress, a lot of them are progressing to first, 17 of them are filed. Now they're consolidated, saying all of these cases are bringing the same, and it makes sense for one judge to listen to them. That way we get the same result, and we might not get 25 different results, and we have the same people. Then they have to say, is this really a class action lawsuit or not? Like, are all the plaintiffs similar situated? It's a 4-part test, and the plaintiffs are going to have to convince the court that, yes, this should be a class action lawsuit. And then there's going to be a period where you're going to be able to get see, am I part of the class or I'm not part of the class,
And
right?
that's where we would then
We
file.
could
That's
join.
when you would join, and that's when you
Okay.
would say, yes, I had this. But a couple of things you can do, going back to taking kind of control a little bit of what I can do. Make sure that my books are copyrighted, that I have everything in the books itself, that I spend not your time, but maybe I have somebody. I pay a high schooler, somebody who really works with technology. I get somebody out there saying, hey, is my work being used without my permission? Is my work being translated without my permission? I'm just working with a client that she had all her books translated into German without her knowing.
I know there
But
was it was like the bestseller, and the author in this other language was like going on tour and doing all sorts of things, and it was a completely plagiarized yet translated book. It happened a few years ago, but my mind was blown. I was like, the audacity. Like, you knew that this was stolen and you were like, I'm gonna go on tour and put my face out there. Like, but I
Well,
mean,
that takes a
Because
giant pair, doesn't it?
well, the
yeah.
problem is in all these lawsuits or like, the smaller things, I remember when you find pirated stuff, is nothing happens to them. So as people start pushing, okay, I
Mhm.
can get away with a little more. I can do a little more. And it's not until somebody actually gets the money. Usually it's the wallet. I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
care where we heard them. That's fine, the wallet.
It's
But
always
it just like we need some kind of win because I feel like people now were like, what are you gonna do? Even on
Yeah.
TikTok, the way, everything is, they're using it. It's just like they don't have repercussions. Like they're just getting away with it.
the
So
amount of to kind of do a little bit of a shift, if it's all right, in
okay.
conversation. The amount of horror, like the just not even just exclusive to our industry, just in general, the amount of people who go on and say some wild shit online,
Mhm.
but direct it towards a specific person, not knowing whether or not it's true, and then it takes off, and other people will state these claims like they are true. And just like I don't understand how, like, lawyers must be very well fed, but at the same time, like, it's almost not possible to regulate because it's
Yeah, that's
on
what's scary.
such, yeah, it's on such a high level. How are you supposed to, like, fact checking isn't even a thing anymore. There's even within our government and our politics, you have two people on two different sides who are consuming two different media who believe two different realities. And at some point, sometimes neither reality is actual factual. Like,
Mhm.
actual factual. Oh my goodness.
It was very rhyming and cute. I liked it. Actual factual.
New book title.
I think that one of the things to think about is, yes, there's a lot out there that is going on, that goes to regulation. And as much of people who dislike the government, that's one thing the government can do well. And that one thing, like the UK, I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago, and every time you get on the website, which is very annoying, right? They have all this privacy law stuff that you have to click and stuff like that. And then I'm like, why am I being annoyed? Right? You have to go through certain things that, yes, it's awful that they took the fact check. It is awful that people only consume, that they view different things, or that we had a senator that was um, sharing things that had nothing to do with what was going on in California right now, but he was sharing stuff as if it was even related to anything. So I think part of it again goes to, I mean, we're all voters, right? We all, part of the reason that it's like, people that complain when they get jury summons, they're like, I don't want to go that. Well, the great thing about the legal system was that you were entitled to a jury by your peers. But if your peers don't show up, right, because it's inconvenient for them, then you're not going to have a jury by your peers. So it kind of is two ways. You have to be civically minded, and you have to, and again, not because the Authors Guild, and there's another that I'll link. There is a artificial intelligence group that is very actively trying to say, okay, you need to make your voice notice. You need to make people understand. It takes 10 minutes to send an email. It takes 5 minutes to make sure that you're at least giving a voice to what is and how is this affecting me, right? How is this affecting me? How is this affecting the use of my work, right? Now, on the use of AI, technology is scary. I mean, think about it, and technology is scary. And the analogy to me is this. At the end of the 19th century, when everybody was, driving buggies, and all of a sudden you have the Model T, it just was like, oh my God, what is going to happen? What is going to happen to carriages? What is happening to horses? What is going to happen? So we're in the, oh my God position right now, which is what's going to happen? What's going to happen to jobs? What's going to happen to creation? What's going to happen? And if we don't take control of saying, well, yeah, there's a lot of bad things that could happen, but there's a lot of positive things that could happen too, right? And ignoring the technology is not going to make it go away. So, how do I want to ethically use it? Because that's one of the things I'm finding. So, I had a client who's like, hey, I found a translator who says they can translate my 20 books in a year. And I said, bullshit. There's nobody that can translate 20 books in a year. And that's so when you, oh, but and it's going to be really cheap. Okay,
Yeah.
like red flag,
Red flag, red flag.
yeah. But I understand because she's like, but then I can get into this market. And I said, yeah. And then all of your works have been fed into a translator.
Yeah.
So you're really not going to have a way to say the same way with people using AI for covers, right? Or using AI for narration, right? So
Copyright if you used AI to make it, right? Because they
yeah, that you can't this. That's no up to now. Now that doesn't mean this could change. Two kind of crises that we have in the literary world is that the administration fired the head librarian of Congress because she didn't want to give access to all the information. And the other one is they fired the head of the Copyright Office because they had put out a report that basically said that the way they interpreted the law is that you can only copyright, which means they're entitled to protection, statutory damages, attorney's fees, if it has human creation. And human creation is not telling a machine, please draw a unicorn in red and white or something like that. That's not human creation. Giving them prompts is not human creation. Now, there is a lot of people who might want to say, well, why is it not human creation if this is not the tool? And it's there was a company out there that was offering creating comic books to a ton of authors. In their contract, they basically said, oh, we're going to use AI to, because it would be really expensive to hire humans, but we're going to have them do the first draft AI. And then the second draft, we'll just have the people who draw come over. I'm like, well, I mean, at what point is this human creation? Have somebody come over and say, oh, instead of blue, this should be red. That's not human creation. So I think authors, musicians, everybody has to be in this concept of saying, as a business, what am I doing to protect myself, right? When I hire an artist, are we talking about? Am I getting drawings? Is it a digital artist? Because digital artists per se doesn't mean they use AI. They just draw on the computer. It's a different way of doing it. But are they using generative AI to get ideas? Are they starting from there? What are you doing with your exclusive art? Are you copywriting it? Are you putting the right banners? Are you asking the questions, right? Again, going to the translation, 20 books in 1 year. If somebody says, I'm going to have this 25 pieces of amazing art in 2 days, I'm like, okay, for $25, what is it that we do?
So from where I sit, with everything that's going on, with the lawsuits that are happening, with laws very slowly emerging, right? Like it took a while to learn that AI work cannot be copywritten. In even that, a lot of people seem resistant to accepting, and that there are intents of attempting to change that as well, right? So from where I sit, I feel like the safest place is just don't fucking touch it right now. Just don't. I do have some people I know, some friends, who think that it's fine to translate their work with AI because it's just a translation. At the same time, I'm like, but you're exactly what you just said, Margarita. You're putting your work into the AI machinery. What rights are you giving up in order to do
But
that?
if they don't care, like, I mean, they're
No,
probably taking
they're trying to get
like, they
money.
want the now, not the
They do.
later. They don't want to think about what will happen later.
They
They'll
have
just, they
bills
want the one
coming
now.
in. That's exactly what it is. They have bills coming in. This is their job. They're trying to get the money while the money is good, right? And the lawsuits are ongoing. Laws haven't even been created yet that will be created. And all I can think is I value my rights and the rights of others more than trying to get in while it's hot and trying to make that money while you can make that money and be, have all of your work translated. Because it's just honestly scary to me to not have your work copywritten. Because if that's the case, if that machinery, that company that had that AI machinery, if they decide they want to be a publisher and they have all of these books, they might be able to then publish it in 40 languages and they get all the rights. And what did you might have given them that right? And they don't even know.
Yeah.
So from where I sit, it seems like the safest thing to do right now is to just move on with blinders, and wait for these lawsuits and the laws to happen and for things to almost, what is it, the saying, the water will always find its level. And right now it's like we're in the middle of a waterfall. There's a
Yeah,
thunder.
I'm just scared that our laws are slower than the AI is. I mean, because they're wanting, I mean, they've even tried to put in that law that they want no control overhead, 10 years of giving free reign to it, that we are not going to be quick enough to handle it. Because I feel like the thing that they said, oh, AI is going to help doctors and da, da, da. I'm like, all I see, it's coming after the arts so they can keep
Yeah.
us in the factories,
There is that positive though that it is helping doctors, it is helping engineers. AI has a lot of positives, but when it comes to art, I don't think anybody was like, hey, how about the robots do the art? Like I don't think anybody thought that. And some people are using it, obviously, spell check. That's fantastic. I love a good spell. Not that I
Well,
even
and it's not just spell check. There are authors out there that are completely AI now, and they're going to start, the houses are going to start picking them up because they're cheap, they're easy, they can keep them mystery.
there's
Um,
entire companies that have millions of like literally.
wasn't there those five guys that are
Yeah.
opening that thing that is
All
just AI, right?
ghostwritten
I mean,
AI. Yeah, it's all ghostwritten AI, and it's going to be it is currently saturating Amazon. And I just saw, I think it was yesterday or the day before, an author who said, and I don't know the legitimacy of this claim, but saying that Amazon algorithm currently appears to not be supporting new works and that they're favoring heavily in the algorithm and in the ranks older works, more than likely because it's currently being saturated by AI written and ghost written works that are not of great quality, because the point is mass production and making that money. Whether or not Amazon's algorithm has changed to that capacity, I can't say. I
I mean,
haven't.
that's not what Mark Zuckerberg wants. I mean, that's what they all want. So I feel like he'd be okay with that.
Well, that's
So
not good customer experience, right?
yeah.
On Amazon anyway. They do want the customer to have a good experience. And when all of the new releases appear to be shit, that's not the reaction that they want, right? So, and knowing that they're being inundated and saturated with this AI driven work, and AI, I literally saw a video today. I thought it was a real person, and my hairdresser looked over. It was a dress. It was a freaking TikTok. It shows me dresses and toys all day long. Toys for the kids, dresses for me. And I was like, "Oh, that's so pretty." And she said, "That's AI." And I was like, "What?" And she look right there. It says AI generated, and I could not believe it. I was blown away. I was gonna buy that freaking dress, and it was probably a piece of shit dress. And but that's just the way it is now, right? Is that, and on TikTok, it is labeled AI generated. On Amazon, it is not. And I have talked to my rep about that, about potentially labeling. I'm like, that way people know. And you're aware and you can just avoid it. And she said there is the potential of a lawsuit if they were to mislabel something. and that is something that they would not want to. I don't know that I'm allowed to even say that. This is on the download. Should I say that, Ma'am? I don't know if I was supposed to say that out loud or not. Maybe, yeah, but I'm sure it's fine. Nobody
I don't
tells
think anybody's gonna turn us in. Well,
that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think already there is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're going to load something up, you already have to disclose whether there's an AI component to it or not.
You do,
Yeah.
but are they doing it? Or is there any way for them to check that? And I know I know that there is a way for them to know, right? They have the machinery to check, regardless of whether or not you're being honest about it, right? They have a way of knowing. And I would assume that they would then have a way of switching their algorithm to be like, if it's AI enhanced or AI whatever.
I think you're giving AI a lot of like power. Like AI does not have a mind of its own. It has to be directed, right? So far, it doesn't have a man of its own. So AI, generative AI. So, but let's take it back to what is causing, and for authors, where is this coming? So, Kindle Unlimited and some of those subscription services give readers the ability to read more books for a certain price. So when you're looking at that is the main source. And if you look at right now, a lot of the authors that are very popular are in Kindle Unlimited, right? So they're part of a subscription service. So what is it that publishers, vendors are looking for is, well, how do we attract readers and what are the readers looking for, right? And is a reader, and I think readers have different hats. You know, there's the sci-fi reader that would traditionally that only read one series because it took a while from series to series. Then you get the romance reader that is reading more than one book a year, that is now reading
Day.
many
A book
books,
a day.
a
Very
book
good.
a day. And, you know, like I was talking to somebody about, like, for me, like you see these things going on, like the one where they reject the bond bait. And then you see like 35,000 of them where you're like, okay, the moon goddess has to be really upset because she goes through all this trouble to find you the perfect match and everybody wants to reject her. And then all of a sudden, you know, and so they're trying to fulfill this perceived need, right? And AI, the question is the consumer really caring about the product they're getting, right? And I think you all have been enough in the industry to know that at the end of the day, there are going to be readers who do care what they're reading.
Yes.
They do care about the plot, they care about the characters, they care about the quality, and those are the people that are going to be the long-term readers because they care about the experience and they connect with your characters, and the characters are not interchangeable, right? And so for those readers, those are the readers you're creating for. For the readers who do not care what they're reading, right? They just want to read through a subscription process. There's nothing you can do to compete because you're not going to be able to produce a book a day,
Correct.
right? And it's going like, you know, sometimes when people say, oh, I can write, I'm like, humanly, you cannot write more than a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
You can't write, even if you're a very fast typer, even if you do certain things. So, you know, for an author to create 4 to 6 books a year, that's a lot. That is a lot. To produce a good quality story, right?
What's sad is we should be so proud, and instead, a lot of us, the majority, I would say, feel that we don't do enough.
Yep.
That
Yep.
we
Yep.
disappointed
Yep.
ourselves for releasing that many books because we should be doing more, and that's insane. We are an insane group Thank you for working with us.
Yeah. And it wasn't that long ago. We always had to wait a year at least, and it would be on that cliffhanger. So I remember Karen Marie moaning, like, when I first started that, and it was just like, it was at least a year before it came out another. And now it's so gratificating, like they have to wait a few months and it's like, oh, I won't even start the series now until it's all out. You're like, oh my God.
That is me though. I am such a hypocrite. I won't start a series until it's done, but I release mine as they
See,
come.
I like it. I
I
love
love
cliffhangers. I
cliffhangers.
love being like excited and like thinking about it, and yeah. So
I think, Stacey, a lot of what you're seeing is maybe a lot of readers have gotten burned by a lot of series that start and never end,
Yes.
or people who stop writing. So I think you feel, and I think we're looking. So right now there's the print reader, the one who wants the pretty book,
Mhm.
which I'm not sure that sometimes they read it or not. They just like it's more
it's
like a
pretty.
picture. It's pretty. Then the ones who want to buy the ebook because that's the one they're going to read, and they want the print book because that's the one they're going to put in their shelf. And then you have the ebook reader who follows certain people and they like certain types of. I, for example, I like good books, so I read good books. Like, and I can start a book and within 20 pages I say yes, I want to continue, or no. And it was so nice when I got to my point where I said I don't have to finish this book. Like it is such a relief to know, I'm like, I don't have to read this book if it's not academic that I have to. Like I have to finish reading a contract because otherwise it would be a bad look.
Thank you for that. Because I don't.
So I think in going back to what's the positive to me is I have not seen, now I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years, but to date, my husband is a big proponent of AI, learning how to use AI ethically, how to go ahead and find protections, and kind of not hiding behind that this is coming, right? And let's learn the best way I can defeat an enemy is to learn them and learn what they like and how they think and what are they looking for. And we went to this conference where a doctor was saying, look, AI has given access in so many different ways. It also has biases you never have thought about. For example, they were doing this program for breast cancer diagnosis, and they were testing it, and they found out that depending on what part of the country you were and what race you were, it gave you different types of treatment plans. And some of them were like, so was it a bias of the programmer? Was it a bias of who had access to what type of information? So AI is a tool, and it's only as good as the programmer is, right? Now, there's still,
It's
go
almost
ahead.
like magic too. Like it's like where you have to be very specific about what you want and why you want it. Because if you put in something like, oh my God, this is horrible, but like solve all homelessness, right? And it's like you put all the homeless people into the potholes, just solve both problems. Like that's not what you wanted. That's not what we asked for, but that is a solution to the problem. That is an answer according to a robot that doesn't understand. So you have to be very particular about what exactly you're asking for and why you want that outcome. And that brings me with the breast cancer is like if you just put in, figure it out and give them a solution, they might be using local for those particular areas, what they typically get where there is a lot of bias in healthcare. There's tons of bias, especially in low income areas. And you should probably account for that. That needs to be a part of the equation. It needs to be added in so that you're getting the optimal result for everybody. But until you get a first draft, you don't know how crappy it's really going to be when it comes out. So maybe like magic isn't the right way to put it, but I'm writing a humorous magic thing which
I
casts.
mean, the magic, and I think taking it to your question here is like, and I've had clients who have asked me, is AI going to replace authors, right?
Correct.
Can it replace authors? And I think the answer is maybe in certain areas it might. And, maybe just like it's going to replace certain types of entry jobs, right? And I think we have, as a society, a bigger question, which is what are you going to do? So the only way you get experienced doctors is if you have them do first and second and third year. The same way you get experienced teachers, experienced writers. Like if you as a writer haven't changed from when you wrote your first book, if your first book and your last book look the same, then there's a problem, right? You have to get better. So how do you train people? Like, how do you get better? You write books, and as a writer, you've gotten your formula down. You've gotten what you like to do. How is that I write? How is that I just, that doesn't mean you don't change, but you kind of thrive on the feedback from your editors, from your readers. And I have clients, for example, that say, I was actually thinking, so how do you get AI to write a review? And if you get AI to write a review, is it really valid?
Yeah.
Because AI has no feelings. And you can now see it, for example, in a lot of books when you know that there's something where the review is very generic. This was the best book I've ever read. You're like, okay, and
Yeah. And
yeah,
why?
yes,
Why?
right?
One of my when I was in, I think it was 10th grade, maybe 11th grade, she had said a good book is a book that makes you feel. So how can you have something that doesn't feel tell you whether or not it's a good book?
Yeah. Well, and actually, you have to remember, and this is a really philosophical, but you talked about signifier and signified when what you use language for, and a machine cannot understand what love is,
Right.
right? And a machine cannot understand what a menage is. I mean, understand it has three people, but who the three people or three whatever. So when ChatGPT came out, we were in Austin for Southwest, and we were trying to feed it, kind of understand how it used. And I have a theory that in Harlequin, all heroes are sheiks or Greeks. That's really it. Like there's sheiks or Greeks, and so the kids laugh because I always read sheiks and Greeks. So it was a sheik and Greek, the Kool-Aid man, and there was some sort of princess. And the scenarios that it kept coming with were so like nobody in their right mind would ever come up with those scenarios, right? Because the Kool-Aid man would go through the wall, which is what they did. And AI will not be able to replace or create a world like Harry Potter, a world like you generate, a world like, you know, Fourth Wing, a world like Sarah Moss. I mean, where you're think about Game of Thrones, think about all of these. All of these are inspired upon what you have read, what you understand, and the feeling you bring into it, right? Because for most of my clients, writing is a very personal thing. They're writing about something and they're working through, whether you make the enemy the villain, somebody you met in third grade and really disliked and what's that you named them, or whether you're inspired by somebody you've met and you modeled that person. AI can't do that.
And
AI cannot do any of that.
I also think this is where authors who are going to survive need to show and need to shine on social media, where I am a real person. This is how it's inspired. And those personal bits that come out of you on social media will translate and you'll get that conversion into readers and into a community. And that's where you can have, your stability in this industry versus an author who isn't out there on social media. I think it's going to be harder because those personal aspects of your book, you've got to be able to market those personal aspects for people to know that A, you're there and that this isn't some crap, that this is exactly what I'm looking for, especially in a sea of, what is it? More than 1,000 books every day are published. More
Well,
than
it's crazy. It is crazy.
So to
But
stand out in that, you've got to put yourself out there, which I think is what's going to happen with the authors who survive and the ones that don't put themselves out there. I don't know how they anticipate surviving.
I think, and I don't know what the answer is. I will say that for me, authors have to be them, right? And
Mhm.
there's some people that social media comes really easily. And I don't know if you guys know about a little phenomenon that a lot of college kids are kind of rejecting the social media. They're
Good,
not.
not
Good.
healthy.
Go
It's
go
so
go
unhealthy.
out and have
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
not in social media. They're not, and there's a couple of lawsuits about this. Also about what are we giving our kids on reactions when you're talking about like how do we know that a book is a good book, right? When you have somebody that reads the book and legitimately is excited about it, and there's word of mouth. And I don't know what the latest statistics are, and there's once a year people do studies about how are people getting recommendations for books and how are people really going to consume, right, that type of art. um, I don't know if it's going to be like it used to be that people met their significant others or the person that they were dating by family, friends, college roommates, and now 60% of people are met online, right? Which is it a good thing? Probably, because maybe you wouldn't have ever met somebody if you don't have that access.
I guarantee the statistics are wrong. And like when it first came out, yes, but us girls that know what's out there, we're not
Now,
meeting anybody. Nope, I'm my dog. I'm good. That's it. But I'm
well,
curious, maybe because we probably need to wrap this up. Is you said like we're not getting rid of it. I mean, AI is here. It's how, but what ethically, as a writer, is there, things that we can use that it's okay to incorporate it or it's okay to have it, because most of us I know here probably just from like, oh, don't want any part of it, but I know it's not going to go away. And we're going to hit that wall every time, with it. So is there ethical ways of using it or not using it?
I think, for example, we're talking about two different artificial intelligence, right? The things that come with Word or with Scrivener, which they give you suggestions for wordings, or it's like a thesaurus, or it's the editor, the Microsoft editor, right? Those are not generative AI. That's basically a program that says, your language is grammatically incorrect. Do you want to correct it? And you have the right to say no, because I like it because I'm actually writing how people speak, not how people according to the grammar. Like nobody says this in real life. Compared to, can I go to generative AI and say, can you write me a book about, right? So those are two different things. So as an author, and you guys have heard me talk about this a lot, as a business owners, you're the CEO of your business. The rest of us are here to support you. And um, I don't think you and I have butted heads as much as Willow and I have sometimes, but which is
Capricorn. That's
well,
why.
sort of, yes, but that's why we get along well, which is she listens,
Yeah.
which is but at the end of the day, you can make a decision, right? I can tell you legally that seems risky to me. Like I had a lot of clients that wanted to try the app. They wanted to try the apps from China. They wanted to try this stuff and to say, okay, but you're risking some of it. And
China
the
has been known. They
yeah,
steal.
yeah, you're risking, and by the way of the matter, the contract says you're going to go to Beijing to litigate, which you're not going to. So if you have a series you want to try it out and figure out if the money's good, you have it. But if they ask you for your passport, hell no, you're not giving it to them, right?
I had a
You're
contract. Didn't they ask? They wanted my pet. They wanted all sorts of things. And
yeah.
that's why Margarita gets every contract that comes through. Because sometimes you don't know and you don't think, but lawyers do.
Well, you don't think about why do you have like look, I remember this. Like every time you go to Best Buy, they ask you what your zip code is or
Yeah.
your phone number. Like you don't really have to give it to them. Like they use it to they're trying to figure out, but you don't have to give it to them. And there are people who are saying no, thank you, right? It's the same thing. If somebody's telling you the only way I'm going to do with business is if you give me your social security number, it's like no, thank you very much,
You don't have
right?
to. It's okay to walk away. I do.
So I think for in my mind, you have to, as the CEO of your business, say, what am I comfortable doing and what am I comfortable using? If I'm going to commission art and spend money, just like with the exclusive images of photographs, right? I want to make sure it's exclusive. If I'm going to contract with somebody, I want to make sure there's some AI language there where somebody represent that this is an original work of art so I can copyright it. Where somebody represents if I hire a translator. I mean, what are their qualifications. Are they going to use? How are they going to use AI? And those questions? And the reality is, most of my clients, not Willow, are very hesitant to a confrontation. They do not like confrontation. They don't like to ask the hard questions.
And
Like,
there's me.
and no, I have some other people in the Willow category, which they
Yeah.
want to ask questions. They want to push back. And maybe we need to have one conversation. The only power you have in negotiation is the ability to say no.
Exactly.
Right?
And there's nothing wrong with walking away and saying that makes me uncomfortable. I'm not at a position where I want to say yes to that. Maybe in 10 years after lawsuits have settled, laws have changed, we have more understanding of things, then maybe I might be okay with things. But if right now I'm not, I don't mind saying no. I don't mind walking away. I think also with other authors though, sometimes it does feel like the deal that might change things for them, whereas I'm fine if I get no deals. I'm just gonna be in my little bubble. Just who do
Well,
you know?
but that's a business decision, right? That's a business decision for somebody who says, look, I want to take the risk. I want to sign this contract because I think it's going to be really life changing, or I want to open a new market. There's nothing wrong with that decision, right? I want to open a new market. Am I letting go of those rights? Because remember, when you're talking about some contracts, you're just talking about whatever book it is or whatever series it is. It doesn't mean your whole catalog, right?
Mhm.
So if you're talking, for example, I have clients that like to explore that have been very successful indies who want to explore being traditional. There's nothing wrong with let me explore. Am I going to make less money? Maybe, but am I going to get more exposure? Am I going to get more print rights? Or do I want to participate? There's nothing wrong with doing that, or with even saying, hey, I want to try something new because that's whole the business changes. So in answer to Stacy's question, I think the one thing I would do is actually whoever you're going to do business with, I would do a little bit of a deep dive on, are they legitimate, right? Are they somebody who knows what they were doing? Because if you, and I see this all the time, these courses that say, pay me $40,000 and I'll give you the $1 million whatever. Or these coaches that I'm going to teach you how to write the next bestseller book.
Oh, I love those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're like, well, why don't you write the next bestseller book?
Oh no, I
Right.
love the
That's
PR ones. Like, follow me for PR, and they have like the most minimal PR followers. You're like,
300 followers. Okay.
Now, I don't say that there's not something to be learned. Like there are people who have successfully have multiple that it's good that they share. That's how we learn, right? That's what works. But one of the things that I think is really clear to me is that there is not one formula that works. There are many formula that works with people. Some people have their debut novel be their most popular one. Sometimes they're into book number 50 before they hit whatever is going to be there. So I would be on the lookout of who am I working with? If I'm working with a marketing company, what is their position on AI? How did we disclose? Like, and you're talking, Willow, for example, on, I think that this is where I get more into some of the traditional publishing companies that say we're going to use AI in marketing. And then the question is how?
Right. And
How
you're
do
allowed
they
to
use it?
say because I had a call with a company, the contract I'm waiting to get through. And once I do, it goes right to Margarita. But we knew that on their social media, AI was used. It was used to promote books. They were like monsters and like werewolves and stuff. And they would have, the image of the guy and he looks hot and everything, but it's obviously AI generated. And I was on the call with Sophie and Sophie brought it up and said, we don't do that. We don't want that. Can that be carved out in the contract? And they said yes. There's nothing wrong with saying, can you carve that out? Can you do this? Because you're not going to be the only one, right? In the whole wide world of all the authors that they're reaching out to, you're not the only ones that have an issue with it. And it's okay of saying, like, if we do work together, I don't want my work to be touched by AI. And that's something that this particular company owns their own AI and they have been making their own AI. So it would be their AI. But even still, I don't trust it. I'm just in my own little bubble right now where I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't want it and I don't mind pushing back. So don't be afraid of saying, look, we're going to carve this out and my lawyer is going to take a look at it. That's
Well, it's the same because, for example, if I tell somebody, please create this exclusive cover, right, for my special edition book, and I don't have an AI language there or representation that this is original work and that it's not going to be sold again, then how can I protect it, right? And how can I assess? And look, it's really hard, I feel, for my clients because you guys have to wear so many hats. You have to wear the hat of the creator, you have to wear the hat of the social media persona, you have to wear the hat of the CEO of the company, and you have to wear, and I have clients who say, I just want you to tell me what I need to worry about.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I don't look good in all hats, okay? I have a big head, so
I will, and that's
hats I don't want to wear.
But I think as long as, like, I have somebody that is but they know they really want to see their work in the reels, and they know, I mean, their book is huge, the adaptation is going to be very difficult, but she's willing to take the risk because she wants to see it in that medium, knowing that it might not end up looking like anything she wants, right? But she's like, it's not like anybody is like knocking on my door saying I'm offering you millions of dollars to make this a reality. I want to see it a reality. But I think, in answer to the question, what can we do to protect? I think it's just thinking through the process of when I contract with anybody, what is their position on the use of artificial intelligence, on the use of respecting other people's copyrights? And also, I would do a little bit of what does it look like in their social media presence, right? What do they advertise? Is this somebody that other people have worked with? And I don't know, you guys are young. Well, it's on this when she's like, do you have any references, right? Do you have people you worked with that actually have you've been able to do things with them? The creating of the art, the creating, for example, especially in the fantasy world, of the maps and of these, like, how do you go through that process that you put it in? And in dealing, I have found lately, dealing with publishers, they're very receptive because they want to protect their work also, right? They want to make sure that the work is protected. So there are conversations, and I think the biggest change from the 2012s when all of this started and when romance was really popular then and now it's coming back is I think the negotiating power has changed a little bit where authors have so many other venues to go to. Publishers know that too, right? And publishers know that they want to have the book succeed because otherwise you're not coming back if you make more money otherwise. And I have other clients that make so much more money being indie that it doesn't make any sense for them to enter into any publishing contract because they lose the power in what makes it. So I think understanding the type of author you are, understanding where you want to go with your career and what you want to explore, right? And producing quality work. I think the thoughts on translation, the thoughts on audiobooks, the thoughts about, I mean, there's so much graphic novels, graphic audio, like there's so much you're thinking about. That's why you look. And when I tell anybody about Contract 101, who, what, when, why,
Mm-hmm.
I need to have those answers. Who's doing what? When are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And what's going to happen, right? Like, what are the expectations going back and forth?
The why is where we have interesting conversations because Margarita will ask me why, and I'm like, because I want it. She's like, I need a little bit more. I know.
I was like, well, that's your answer to any.
Yeah, literally.
I want it.
I want it. Yeah.
Oh, don't even get us started on what is it? Stones? No, stones, healing rocks. What is it?
Crystals.
Crystals.
Oh, my crystals. Yes, my rock. Yes.
She'll go watch the packing video after this. But I think it's a great place to wrap up. We've been going over an hour. We could seriously talk to you forever. So I know you'll be back because we'll be like more answers.
Okay,
so people, if you have more questions for Margarita, please leave them in the comments too.
And I will give you the links of places because I actually think just getting yourself informed. Don't give yourself a heart attack. Don't give yourself that it gets me too stressed. It's like, okay, if I want to know something, the Authors Guild has a great summary. There's a great summary of what cases are going on. There's also a great summary of who you can, contact your senator, contact your representative. I'll give you all that so you guys can put it in the link.
Perfect. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming, Margarita. Guys, like,
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Bye.
until next time.
Bye.